All right, so my name is Christopher Reed, and fortunately for you, I am not the one who's going to be speaking for you today. What I'm here to do is I'm here to introduce our next speaker. Now, this is somebody that I've worked with closely over the last year as a fellow president of Speak Out, and if there's one word that I would use to describe this person, it'd be dedicated. This guy puts in so many hours to help students on campus, and in particular put this event on. When I leave here at 6 o'clock at night after doing my homework and study groups, he's still sitting in the library printing off pamphlets and doing research, and he is an unbelievable individual. Over the last year of working with him, I've seen him grow a great deal. I mean, he would categorize himself, because we all took a personality test, as very, very introverted. And over this last year, I've seen him grow and come to step in front of students and try to help them achieve things. This entire conference that's going on right now, we've had fantastic speakers that you've heard today and you've heard over the years. In the past, we've never had as high of a profile speaker as we had with Kyle Maynard talking with us this morning, later this evening, and that was down to his vision. He found this guy, he brought it to us in the Speak Out leadership and said, I want to bring this person here, what steps do we need to take, and he made it happen. So any of you that felt motivated this morning by Kyle's speech, that's all thanks to this individual. So I would like to introduce not only one of the presidents of Speak Out, but someone that has come to be a close friend of mine over the year, Mr. Matt Lee.
Thank you. So, I slightly deceived you all. The title of my workshop is Makeover Your Ability to Connect with Others. Take care of that real quick. The title of my workshop is Makeover Your Ability to Connect with Others. But that's only because shame on you doesn't really draw in the crowds. The real title of my workshop is Shame on You, and today we'll be talking about vulnerability and shame. However, I'm going to be making the argument today that it is through vulnerability that you will be able to develop a deeper and more meaningful connection with others. And Gordon, actually, will that work? All right. So I deceived you all with the title, but I didn't deceive you all with the topic. We're going to talk about building our connection with others. And to start this workshop on vulnerability off right, we're going to start off with an exercise. I'd like you to turn to the person next to you, introduce yourself, and then share one of your deepest secrets. Just kidding. Just a little icebreaker. Nobody run out the door. But just so you know, we are going to jump into the deep end. The topic today is shame and vulnerability. And if this is your first communication conference, sorry. I hope you didn't expect to be eased into what Speak Out is all about. In Speak Out, we're about improving our communication habits, and sometimes we've got to tackle the stuff that goes down to a deeper level. And today is that day. So close your eyes if you have to, but we're gonna dive in. By the way, do you all like the color I painted my toenails for this picture? That was a joke. All right, there's 3 things I want you to take away and pay attention to throughout my workshop. 3 things that if you get nothing else, at least get these things. Awareness of the role that shame plays in communication, that appropriate vulnerability is the opposite of shame, and it can enhance your relationships. And empathy, truly listening and validating another person and not judging them, can eradicate shame. Dr. Brené Brown is the one who pioneered all of this. This is her book. It's called Daring Greatly. If anybody wants to borrow it from me after I'm done, let me know. Dr. Brené Brown, she is a research professor at the University of Houston. She's perhaps most well known for her TED Talks. In fact, her TED Talk on vulnerability is one of the top 10 most watched TED Talks. And as of this morning, it had about 20 million views. Dr. Brown started her research career by looking into the construct of shame in everyday human experience. After more than 10 years of researching, she noticed that some of her research participants were a little more shame resilient than others. And by shame resilient, I mean better at dealing with instances of shame. And what Dr. Brown found is that the courage to be vulnerable was central to the ability to be shame resilient. And that's what we'll be talking about later. These ideas that were garnered from Dr. Brown's research really go beyond the self-help section of your local bookstore. I think her research will prove to be timeless, and I think her ideas have the potential to reshape the future of America. It's a profound statement, but when you examine American culture, you see that it's built around shaming, competition, and comparison. Social networks have added fuel to this fire in America. And the reason why we struggle with insecurity is because we compare this dynamic that social media introduces to us is that we compare our behind the scenes with everybody else's highlight reel. So all of this matters, everything I'm going to tell you today, it matters and it affects you because American culture, the society we live in is built around shaming, competition, and comparison. And vulnerability is the antidote. Don't think you have shame? Think again. Dr. Brown says there are 3 truths about it. They are, first, that we all have it. Shame is universal and is one of the most primitive human emotions. It developed around the time when we were hunter-gatherers and we were real primitive, and getting kicked out of the tribe meant death. Humans back then couldn't survive without the tribe, and the tribe couldn't survive without its individuals, but shame developed back then for reasons to keep people from wanting to get, from doing things that would get them kicked out, and then therefore meaning death. It's manifest and it's grown throughout the last 10,000 years into what we have today with social media and stuff. So the only people who don't experience shame lack the capacity for empathy and human connection. So those of you who think shame doesn't apply to you, you have to ask yourself this question. Are you a sociopath? Yeah. Or are you someone who experiences shame? The second truth is that we're all afraid to talk about it. And the third truth is that the less we talk about it, the more control it has over our lives. So the reason that shame is so powerful is because humans are hardwired for connection. In other words, we need love and belonging. Love and belonging are irreducible needs of they're irreducible factors of the human condition. And research has shown this again and again. Dr. Brown defines shame as the intensely painful experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Shame is the fear of disconnection. In simpler terms, shame is the feeling of I'm not blank enough. I'm not smart enough, beautiful enough, rich enough, thin enough, cool enough. I'm not good enough. These are the most common areas where people experience shame. And as you can see, if you look at the list, shame is all around us. At work, at school, at home, in our families, in our bank accounts, in our religions, and even in the bedroom. So we're going to diverge for a moment. We're going to take a look at feminine and masculine norms in today's society, American society. And isn't it a norm to put masculine before feminine? It is. So let's keep calm and break the norms. These norms were established by a group of researchers in 2003, so they're decently current. And they actually updated the old list of norms that only had like 5. According to the guy who led the research, conformity to masculine or feminine norms is defined as adhering to the societal rules and standards about how to be masculine or feminine, and it is demonstrated in the individual's behaviors, feelings, and thoughts. For the feminine norms, the question was asked, what norms do women have to conform to in order to be considered feminine? The answers were nice in relationships, so develop friendly and supportive relationships with others, pursue a thin body ideal, refrain from calling attention to one's talents or abilities, domesticity, meaning to maintain the home, romantic relationship, so invest yourself in a romantic relationship, Sexual fidelity, don't be seen as sexually promiscuous. And the big one was invest in appearance, meaning commit resources to maintaining and improving physical appearance. The 4 norms that were rated the highest are nice in relationships, thinness, modesty, and invest in appearance. So what that says for a lot of women is stay small and modest, look pretty, and don't ruffle anyone's feathers. Now for the masculine norms. Emotional control was top of the list, meaning don't show emotion. Risk-taking, violence, power over women, and outward disdain for homosexuals. So you can't just be straight to conform to masculine norms in society. You have to outwardly hate homosexuals. Not much to being a man, would you all agree? Are these the expectations that you want your dads and brothers to live by and your sons to be raised to? So if you fail to meet one of those norms, one of those feminine or masculine norms, one of these unwritten expectations, that creates the feeling of shame. At least that's what society says. So I'm going to go deeper into the topic of women and shame. But obviously, I'm a man, and I cannot tell you what it is like, what shame is like for a woman. So I only convey to you words directly from Dr. Brown, and this video clip that I'm about to show helps illustrate a powerful metaphor about what shame is like for women.
Scusate, comincio.
I apologize for the Italian. It's the only video I can find on YouTube. be sitting there asking yourself, what in the world does that have to do with women and shame? So, that movie, it's Flashdance. It's the final dance scene from Flashdance. It's a story about an exotic dancer who aspires to be a ballerina for a prestigious dance company. And that scene you just saw was her final audition for that dance company. Obviously, she nailed it. She stumbled a little bit in the beginning, but she nailed it. She got the job. But what this video, the video as it acts as a metaphor, it's about this specific scene. For this scene, they had 5 people. It took 5 actors to make that one scene, and that's not counting anybody that was on the panel. They had the actress that you saw dancing, and they showed her face, and then they had a body double for the body shots, and then they had a classical ballerina for the spins. They had a gymnast for the big leaps and jumps, and the breakdancing scene, that was a man. So shame for women is like being the actress in that audition. In your life, you're on audition, and you're trying to win approval for the board. But in trying to be the woman in that audition, they try to do it all, and they try to do it perfectly. The breakdancing, the classical dancing, all in one act. But unlike the movies, they're only one person. They don't have the help of filmmakers and body doubles, so sometimes they fall and they stumble. And they have to work really hard to keep it all together, and it doesn't always work. So shame for women is being held up against the ideal that somehow we can live our lives and edit them as we're living them so that only the world sees what is perfect about us. Shame is not being able to do it all and people see you failing. Shame is being rejected. Shame is when the mask is pulled off and the unlikable parts of you are seen. Shame is being an outsider, not belonging for women. For men, shame is failure at work, on the football field, in marriage, in bed, with money, with your kids. It doesn't matter. Failure equals shame. Shame is being wrong, not doing it wrong, but being wrong. Shame is a sense of being defective. Shame is when people think you're soft. Showing fear is shameful for men. In fact, some men are taught to take fear and turn it into rage. And what usually ends up happening is they become the guy who just steamrolls over whatever they're afraid of. And in today's society, it usually ends up being their wife, their coworkers, or their kids. And this picture is really interesting. It comes, I pulled it off Instagram. I follow this guy. I was in the Army, and this guy was Special Forces. He has a Instagram page called State the Course, and he posts, motivational pictures and stuff. But this guy that posted this, he's a hardcore dude. And it's very interesting, if you read that, warriors feel pain and fear, but they never show it. That's one of those masculine norms. It's one of those shame triggers for men in society. If you're a warrior, if you're one of the baddest dudes in our country, yeah, you feel pain and fear, you can't show it. And that's just unacceptable. Don't be weak is beat into us from the moment we step onto the playground of our childhood, and the attack doesn't relent even into adulthood. The word pussy is used against us by both friend and foe, and it's used like a dagger that can pierce through even the thickest of armor. We are told things like suck it up, deal with it, and stop being such a bitch. The societal expectations of manhood are easy to meet, as long as we hide all emotion and fear. And if you think about it, and as you saw from the masculine norms list, there's really not much depth to the classical archetype of a man. Now, I think I have time. I'd like to read you a portion from Brené's book. It has to do with men and shame, and the way Brené worded it, the way Brené said it. It's her story, and I just couldn't do it justice by regurgitating it into a PowerPoint or anything like that. So I'm going to read straight from the book. So, in 2006, I met with 22 community college students, male and female, to talk about shame. It was my first co-ed large group interview. At some point, a young man in his early 20s explained how he had recently divorced his wife after coming back from serving in the military and finding out that she was having an affair. He said he wasn't surprised because he never felt good enough for her. He explained that he constantly asked her what she needed and wanted, and that every time he got close to meeting her needs, she moved the goalpost another 10 feet. A young woman in the class spoke up and said, "Guys are the same way. They're never satisfied either. We're never pretty, sexy, or skinny enough." Within seconds, a conversation broke out about body image and sex. The discussion was mostly about how it's so scary to have sex with someone you care about when you're worried about how your body looks. The young women who started the conversation said, "It's not easy to have sex and keep your stomach sucked in. How can we get into it when we're worried about our back fat?" The young man, who had shared the story of his divorce, slammed his hand down on the desk and shouted, "It's not about the back fat. You're worried about it. We're not. We don't give a shit." The class fell completely silent. He took a couple of deep breaths and said, "Stop making up all this stuff about what we're thinking. What we're really thinking is, do you love me? Do you care about me? Do you want me? Am I important to you? Am I good enough?" That's what we're thinking. When it comes to sex, it feels like our life is on the line, and you're worried about that crap? At that point, half of the young women in the room were so emotional that they had their faces in their hands. A few girls were in tears, and I couldn't breathe. The young woman who had brought up the body image issue said, "I don't understand. My last boyfriend was always criticizing my body." The young vet who had just brought us all to our knees replied, "That's because he's an asshole. It's not because he's a guy. Some of us are just guys. Give us a break, please." A middle-aged man in the group joined in, staring straight down at his desk. "It's true. When you want to be with us in that way, it makes us feel more worthy. We stand a little taller, believe in ourselves a little more. I don't know why, but it's true, and I've been married since I was 18. It still feels that way with my wife." Never in my life before that moment did I think about men feeling vulnerable about sex. Never did I consider that their self-worth was in any way on the line. I didn't understand. So I interviewed many more men about the topic of sexuality, shame, and worthiness, including mental health professionals. In one of my final interviews on the topic, I sat down with a therapist who had spent more than 25 years working with men. He explained that from the time boys are 8 to 10 years old, they learn that initiating sex is their responsibility, and that sexual rejection soon becomes the hallmark of masculine shame. He explained, "Even in my own life, when my wife isn't interested, I still have to battle feelings of shame. It doesn't matter if I intellectually understand why she's not in the mood. I'm vulnerable, and it's very difficult." When I asked him about his work around addiction and pornography, he gave me an answer that helped me understand that issue in an entirely new light. He said, "For $5 in 5 minutes, you think you're getting what you need, and you don't have to risk rejection." So different circumstances create the feeling of shame in different people. However, shame feels the same to men and women. And the messages and expectations that drive shame are absolutely fueled and organized by gender. Dr. Brown says in her book that understanding these norm lists and what they mean is critically important to understanding shame and cultivating resilience. The feminine and masculine norms are the foundation of the triggers of shame, and here's why. If women want to play by the rules, they need to be sweet, thin, pretty, stay quiet, be perfect moms and wives, and not own their power. One move outside these expectations and bam, the shame web closes in. Men, they need to stop feeling, start earning, put everyone in their place, and climb their way to the top or die trying. One break from the fulfillment of these expectations, and bam, shame cuts you down to size. How many perfectionists do I have in the room? A few? A few closet perfectionists maybe too? Perfectionism is directly linked to shame. So perfectionism is not the same thing as striving for excellence. Dr. Brown says that perfectionism is not about healthy achievement and growth. It's a defensive move. It's the belief that if we do things perfectly and look perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. Brene calls perfectionism the 20-ton shield that we lug around thinking it will protect us, when in fact it's the thing that's really preventing us from being seen. In a thesaurus, vulnerability carries synonyms such as helpless, defenseless, powerless, impotent, weak, and susceptible. Now take any one of those synonyms and place it in the blank. I feel weak, I feel defenseless, I feel powerless. That's a scary thought for the majority of us. So what we do is we put up barriers to protect ourselves. But these barriers ultimately lead to disengagement and disconnection. These barriers are what Dr. Brown calls masks and armor. And we've all worn the proverbial mask at one point or another, and the armor refers to not being perceived as weak. We may not feel shame with these masks on and this armor protecting us, but what prevents shame also prevents connection. That's a really important connection, so I'm going to say it again. What prevents shame also prevents connection. As human beings, we require connection. The need for connection is one of the few things that spans all races, colors, and creeds. It's the common denominator of the human experience. Dr. Brown argues that in order to find true connection, we must be vulnerable. We must take off our masks and armor and present ourselves with all of our imperfections. Our imperfections are what make us human. Presenting ourselves as inhuman, perfect beings only allows for connection on the superficial level. However, presenting ourselves as imperfect allows us to achieve connection on a deeper level and leads to a richer, more fulfilling life. So we need to redefine vulnerability starting today. Dr. Brown defines being vulnerable as being all in, 100% engaged, wholehearted, imperfect, authentic, compassionate, and letting yourself be seen. So let's all write a letter to the nice people over at Merriam-Webster and let them know that we want the definition changed. In her research, Dr. Brown found that the people who were best at dealing with instances of shame were those who knew exactly the risks of being vulnerable and took the risks anyways. Surprisingly, the people who were the worst at dealing with shame were those who put up the barriers to protect themselves. So I'd like to caveat that real quick. Are there bad people out there who will take advantage of our vulnerabilities? Yes, that is a fact. However, treating everyone as if they might take advantage of us is a heavy price to pay for protection, as this kind of protection requires disconnection. So what Dr. Brown is telling us is take off the masks and armor and be seen. But how do we do that? So are you all sold? Do you want to leave here with some tools to maybe improve? I took you down, I'm going to bring you back up. So let's get on to the fun part. The first tool I've already given you. It's awareness, critical awareness. You are now aware of vulnerability and shame. Congratulations. You will begin to see it everywhere. Be aware of how a vulnerable moment can enhance your connection with another person. Be aware of shame, and when you're aware, you can consciously choose not to play along. And you'll need to water the awareness seed. You'll need to let it get sunlight so that it can grow, and if you do that, it will flourish. Be real. If you're scared, say you're scared. If you don't know, say you don't know. If you made a mistake, say you made a mistake. If you feel hurt, say you feel hurt. If you're in love, say you're in love. Number 3, stop being an enabler. Stop being an enabler of the societal norms that tell us what we have to be and how we should act. Guys, don't feel like you can't be yourself and feel feelings. We need to put an end to this macho crap. Another thing, stop putting your friends down. Guys, you know what I'm talking about. That joking way that we call each other names and assert our dominance, joking or not, it spreads shame. So cut it out. Ladies, you don't have to invest all of your resources in your appearance. It's 2015. You're beautiful because of who you are and how you treat other people. Another thing, allow the men in your life to be vulnerable. It's going to feel weird at first because society has trained us that men can't be vulnerable. They can't show feelings. So I'm going to tell you, it's going to be weird at first. But don't pull back when the man in your life opens up and tries to be vulnerable. Don't pass judgment on him. If you do, you're going to take a big risk. The risk is going to be that guy that's special to you in life, he's going to become really great at faking being vulnerable, but he'll never actually be real about his emotions with you until it's too late. Dr. Brown says that people who are highly shame resilient are highly aware of the gender norms in society and the subconscious expectations that they place on people. People who are highly shame resilient keep these lists, those lists I showed you earlier. They keep them in their mind, and when shame starts creeping up on them, they can reality check these norms and say, not today, shame. Number 4, say goodbye to being perfect. Perfectionism is not about striving for excellence. It's a defense mechanism that prevents us from failing and feeling shame. It's a way of thinking and feeling that says this: if I look perfect, do it perfect, work perfect, and live perfect, I can minimize shame, blame, and judgment. So ask yourself these questions. How realistic are the expectations that I place on myself and or that others place on me? Can I be all these things all the time? Am I being who I want to be or what others want me to be? And here's another prescription. Go do something not perfect, and then see how you feel afterwards. Is it as bad as you thought? It won't be. See if anybody shames you. They probably won't. And if they do, I tell you to tell them to go watch Dr. Brene Brown's vulnerability talk on the TED website or on YouTube. And then seriously consider whether that person is worth having in your life or not. Break the grasp that perfectionism has on your life. Number 5, ask for help. By admitting your weaknesses, you make room for other people's gifts. If you notice yourself trying to do everything yourself, take a step back. Let the people around you know that you're doing everything you can, but you need help. Brene Brown says, regardless of who we are, how we were raised, or what we believe, all of us fight hidden, silent battles against not being good enough, not having enough, and not belonging enough. When we find the courage to share our experiences and the compassion to hear others tell their stories, we force shame out of hiding and end the silence. Number 6, show empathy towards others, especially when they're in a shameful moment and they're reaching out to you. So empathy and sympathy are two things that are kind of, we don't know. And if this thing restarts while I'm talking, I'm going to freak out. I do not want updates right now. So I found this, it's a little animated short that I found on the web, and it's Brene Brown talking, and it's kind of clips pieced together of Brene Brown when she's been talking at various events. But it's animated, and pay attention to the differences between empathy and sympathy. That's what she's talking about.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. At least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
That last sentence was great. Let me repeat it. Rarely do words make something better. The thing that makes something better is connection. So when someone reaches out to you and they're in a shameful moment, show empathy. Finally, the enough mandate. Yes, this one gets its own slide. The enough mandate is simple. People who are highly shame resilient know one thing, that they are enough. Believing that we are enough is the way out of the masks and armor. With that sense of being enough comes an embrace of worthiness, boundaries, and engagement. So take off the masks and armor and be vulnerable. You have to put yourself out there to feel connection. You have to risk it. But the reward isn't only worth it, it's the secret to life. It's human connection. And don't forget, we are hardwired for it. It's in our DNA. We need connection, so we need to be vulnerable. And you have to know that everybody, every single person in this room, struggles with some form of vulnerability. So I'm going to expand on number 2 real quick. The I've had enough is the boundaries against shame. For those people in your life, we all have them, who are causing shame in you, maybe holding you up to expectations that you can't meet, or maybe that you don't want to meet. That's where boundaries come in. You have to set boundaries for those people and the amount of time and the amount of say that they have over your feelings. A famous saying, or a famous way to put it is, stop letting them live rent-free inside your head. So, another, number 3, the engagement versus disengagement. What that means is getting out there, letting yourself be seen. That's what engagement is. Getting out there, taking the risks. Disengagement is staying at home and not being vulnerable and not putting yourself out there. And when you feel the moment, when you're in a conversation with somebody and you feel that moment to be vulnerable and you make that split-second decision inside your head, I hope you make the decision for engagement and not disengagement. Be vulnerable. Don't refrain from being vulnerable. I have one more video. This one's also Brené Brown. Like I said at the beginning, all of this is based off Brené Brown's work in her book, and she just says it best. This is Brené Brown on Oprah, and it's 3 things you can do to avoid a shame spiral.
So I love this question. You mentioned gremlin thinking. This is from Allison Smella. You mentioned gremlin thinking. What's the silent language to move that aside and step into authenticity? Good question.
So men and women who had high levels of shame resilience, meaning they could totally acknowledge and move through shame without jeopardizing their authenticity, had 4 things in common. The first was they know what triggers shame for them. They know what the triggers are. Like for me, I know what the triggers are. I have stuff around motherhood and balancing work. I have stuff around appearance. Secondly, huge skill, you can reality check them. 3, you reach out and share your story. And 4, you speak shame. So just to boil it down, it's 3 totally counterintuitive things. Talk to yourself like you talk to someone you love when you're feeling unworthy. How would I talk to Ellen and Charlie in a moment of unworthiness? Would I ever, I would say to myself, God, you're so stupid, Renee, what were you thinking? Would never talk to my kids that way. Talk to yourself like you talk to someone you love. Reach out to someone you trust and tell your story. Shame cannot survive being spoken. It needs 3 things to just absolutely grow exponentially.
Yeah, that's why secrets really intensify the shame. And you're
That's it.
as sick as your secrets, because when you're ashamed, you keep it a secret, and that just sort of festers and ends up really overwhelming your life, the shame. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but when you release it, that's why all those years on the Oprah show, people come on and share things that they never shared with anybody else. You leave and you feel freer, you feel unburdened by some of it, yes.
Absolutely. Secrecy is one of the 3 things. Secrecy, silence, and judgment. Those are the 3 things shame needs to grow exponentially in our lives. The antidote, empathy. It cannot survive being spoken and being met with empathy.
So does anybody have any questions? Okay, I met my time limit, and actually getting out of here 5 minutes in advance, so thank you for your time, and thanks for coming. Question?
So I'm familiar with Brene Brown's work, and I feel like this is something that I've been working on the last year and a half. And I get the sense that when you were a person who was not comfortable being vulnerable, and then you decide to start being vulnerable, that many people around you are very uncomfortable.
Okay.
And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that. I just find that some people are very accepting of you being vulnerable and connecting, and other people it scares them. It almost like pushes people away.
It totally does, and with that, I'm going to talk about, it's a topic in communication. It's called social penetration theory, and if you can imagine, picture in your head an onion, and with certain people and certain others in life, our relationships with them are like an onion. So on the outer levels of the onion, you have your surface level, you have your, how are you today, how's the weather? In the middle layers you have maybe your political opinions, and maybe your religious views, and maybe some of your childhood history. Down at the core level, you have that core level of being, like who you are and how you view yourself, where you view your weaknesses and the things that you struggle with. And with the people who pull away when you get down to that core level, or maybe even the middle level, with those people that pull away, I can only say that maybe they didn't grow with the kind of connection. Our society beats into us that you can't be vulnerable, men and women. And so they're probably still struggling with that. On another note, going back to that social penetration theory, with each relationship with those people, you have to gauge, based off who those people are, how deep of the onion you're going to go. And some people in life, you just can't be vulnerable with them. I hope that you have people in your life that you can be vulnerable with. And if you don't, I'm here, your teachers are here, and I just hope that, it's unfortunate that there are people like that. I have one of my best friend. I can't be vulnerable with him. It's unfortunate. He's that macho stereotype of guy. He doesn't believe in communication. He's 27 years old. He's done growing. And there's just people like that in life. He's still my best friend, but I know my limits with him. And that's where the boundaries come in. And when he causes shame in me, when he puts me down, calls me a pussy, whatever, it's a joking thing that guys do. It's a way to assert our dominance, whatever. I have to put boundaries on him. I have to kind of like take a breather from him. And so keep it, you kind of have to know who those people are in life. You can't just go up to somebody and share your deepest secrets. With the social penetration through, you kind of have to, you start at the outside, you get to the middle, and then you get to the core. And being vulnerable does not mean going straight to the core. Being vulnerable just means with those people who you can go to the core with, it means don't be afraid to go there. Question?
When do you reach the limit where you get to the point where you're too comfortable with yourself, where you're too vulnerable, where you no longer get support from people around you because you're so aware that I'm right, I'm correct, and you're wrong because you're abrasive about what you believe because you're just too comfortable with yourself?
That would go into conflict management. That would go into some of the skills where you can approach things with people. So let me make sure I got your question right. Being vulnerable, so it feels to me like you go out and you tell people your opinions and you believe strongly in them and it pushes others away, is that correct?
Yeah, you get to points where you say, just for example, people protesting the flag. You have two sides of the story where one person, they feel so strongly about it and that it's been shelled up for so long that they let it loose and I'm going to step on the flag. And it's a form of protest movement so they can feel comfortable and they feel right about themselves. And then you have the other people on the other side that say, if you don't like my flag, get out of my country.
Yeah.
And there's the conflict.
I understand that completely. Some people, when they see somebody standing on the flag, they want to go punch them in the face. They don't want to hear what their side of the story is. But in that situation, and with the whole push of this workshop, what this is getting at, is instead of going and punching them in the face, go and ask them, hey, what's your story? Why are you standing on my flag? And listen and show empathy. Because, so everybody in this room fights, I said earlier, everybody in this room fights battles inside that you don't know about. Those people standing on that flag, whether you agree with it or not, they're fighting a battle. They're trying to make a statement. They may be doing it in the wrong way, but they're fighting a battle and they're not winning. And so go up to them and listen and practice that empathy. Listen and validate and try and understand their point of view. And I'll tell you, if you go at them and you say, that's wrong, I can't believe you're doing that, get out of my country, I don't believe in that, I can't believe you're doing that, I think your cause is dumb, they're going to close up. They're not going to, they have no cares about what you say to them after that point. But if you go up to them and you say, hey, tell me your story. Why are you standing on my flag? And then you listen to them and you validate them and you show them that you actually care. You can care about somebody and care about their opinion without believing in what they're doing. You can still want to punch them in the face inside of you. But when you listen and validate, that opens them up for listening and validating you. And maybe after you listen to their side of the story, maybe you can have an intelligent discussion about your point of view. And maybe through listening to them, your point of view will evaporate because maybe you don't see their point of view. So the beautiful thing about a college campus is that hopefully you can do that. Hopefully there's people that you can go up and say, hey, tell me why you're standing on that flag. Tell me what you believe in. Tell me what your struggles are. And then have an intelligent conversation without getting defensive. But the thing you have to do is you have to put your convictions, you have to put them on hold for a second and listen.
Yeah, that's really a matter of having that emotional intelligence. Because like with that, what you have to do is you have to understand that sometimes people are doing that to kind of get that attention, that negative attention. You know what I mean? They want that. And that actually feeds it and makes it worse. So instead, like what Matt said, exactly that, communication is that listening to their narrative. Not to the point of listening to the point where you don't have any values anymore, but you connect with the person. And all of a sudden it changes the whole outlook. It's emotional intelligence. It's absolutely amazing. It's so key in today's society. The way we're getting jobs, the way you have relationships and so on. So I know you're out of time, so I don't want to.
That listening,
Yeah.
it's tough when somebody's standing on a flag.
Yeah.
But when you can kind of push your convictions down for 1 second and listen, that makes you the bigger person.
Yeah.
It's what this whole conference is about today, being a bigger person. And so I hope that I fully answered your question.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much.